Welcome to Beat Diabetes. Today, among other things, we'll be talking about the low spike diet, the diet that absolutely crushes diabetes. And we'll be looking at when is the best time to test your post-meal glucose to find out just what's going on. Well, before we get to some of the topics that we'll be covering, I wanted to just give a little update about our Fall 2022 challenge. And the challenge is to become non-diabetic by Christmas. Become non-diabetic by Christmas. Now, it has already begun. It began on September the 1st. But I am taking registrations until the 15th. So the 15th of September will be the last day. Now, I know in the previous challenge, I said that, then I extended the time and extended it some more. But I'm going to be a little bit more serious about it this time because I'm not really being fair to you if I let you get in about halfway through. What I will do, though, is if you want to sign up and it's already past the deadline, I'll stick you in a group for the next challenge, which hopefully will begin on February 1 of 2023. So I won't forget about you. But if you want to be in on this challenge, it's got to be by September 15th. What does it involve? Well, it involves a number of things. We've got a web page down in the description you can look at and kind of look over what it involves very quickly. Several of the things you will be asked to contain your eating within a 6-hour window each day. Basically, that means 2 meals. It means no snacking in between. There'll be videos assigned. There'll be tips given, emails sent out once a week, videos that I'll make, recommended other videos that you will be assigned to watch. So it's kind of a comprehensive package, very intensive for 4 months, September through the end of December. But we say become non-diabetic by Christmas. So we're hoping that the day after Christmas, we're going to do a collective test. We're going to do 5 glucose tests with Mike the Meter scattered over the course of the day, and we're going to average those and see what our A1C would be based on those 5 tests. Anyway, sign up by September 15th. Okay, one other thought that I need to address. I know with the last challenge, some people were getting very frustrated because they were saying, I've signed up and I re-signed up and I'm not getting anything. Well, it's not because I'm picking on you. I think the main reason is because most of your email clients, the email software that you use to get your email, they have a way of taking your emails that are coming in and putting them in different folders. And some people don't seem to realize that. And so there's a chance that because these emails are going out to, well, right now it's at something like 1,200 people, somehow these email clients recognize that and they say that's spam. So they may put them in a spam folder. They may not. They may put them in a social folder. There's several folders. Your primary folder, spam folder, social folder, promotions folder, junk folder. So if you say, I'm not getting them, you may well be getting them. We had people write in and say, well, I just checked a certain folder and I realized I've been getting them all along. So you're going to have to check all your folders, primary, junk, spam, social, promotions. I think there's an updates folder in some of these. So check those folders. All right, let's get into a couple of comments / questions. Here's someone who left a comment and said, I went to see the doctor after blood work for the follow-up. I was nervous because I've been following your advice and not hers. Well, I'm a little nervous to even say that because I don't like it. I support doctors. I believe in doctors. If you've got a doctor that you absolutely can't listen to their advice, find another doctor. There are numerous doctors throughout the world, so you don't have to be stuck with one. Anyway, says, I was nervous. I've been following your advice, not hers. Well, let me tell you, she was astounded at my results. In all her years as a doctor, she's never seen anybody reverse diabetes. Wow. And sadly, I hear this frequently. All her years, she's never seen anything like this. He says, I went from 11.5 to 5.3. My glucose went from 845, I guess occasionally during the day, he would get into the 800s, which is just horribly high. So high, it's hard to imagine. He says, now I'm at 114, 2 hours after meals. By nighttime, I'm in the 80s. My doctor took me off the meds, so thank you very much. Wow. Well, if I had tested at 845 for a glucose back in the day when I was struggling, I wouldn't have any more glucose problems. I think I would have died of a heart attack. I mean, I'll never forget the first time I tested my blood sugar, and I knew enough to know what it should be approximately. And the secretary at the ministry where I worked brought me a glucose meter and showed me how to use my first introduction to Mike, showed me how to use it. And it took me a few stabs of my fingers to get it all working that first time. And the first one was like 120 something, so it wasn't really that bad. Now, I just happened to be at a good point in my time of the day where it wasn't so bad, but it could go very high. But anyway, if I had seen an 845, I would have been so shocked. I'd have been headed for the emergency room in the hospital. But thinking about this guy had blood sugar in the 800s, and now he doesn't even peak beyond about 115, 120. I mean, folks, we're talking about something that works so well. It kind of shocks me that the whole world hasn't seen this and figured it out and immediately converted to this approach, because it just flat works. And, there's been a saying around for a long time that if you build a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door. And if there was ever a better mousetrap, the low-carb, time-restricted eating, no snacking lifestyle is the better mousetrap. And why isn't the world beating a path to our door? I don't know. Now, you can just listen to all the testimony after testimony after testimonies that we see on this channel. And I'm not the only one. I mean, there's all kinds of low-carb clubs and low-carb Facebook groups and low-carb doctors and low-carb nutritionists that are saying this, and yet still we're in the minority. I don't know why that is. It won't stay that way. It works too well to stay that way, but there's a lot of stubborn people that are just refusing to accept it. And my question is, well, when you see this kind of evidence, and we're not just talking about a random individual here. We're talking about thousands upon tens of thousands of people that I see, that others see. It just flat works. One more comment. This person says, I meant to write ages ago, you, speaking about me, maybe spike at 1 hour after eating. But with me, he says, I test as soon as I finish eating. So from 0 minutes, it's already climbing. Well, I don't really notice that. It usually takes me a good 10 to 12 minutes before I see much movement on my meter. He says by 15 minutes after eating, it's high. 30 minutes after eating, I spike. 45 minutes, it's usually there. In other words, from 30 to 45, it's pretty much at the peak. And by 1 hour after eating, it's already coming down. I was insulin resistant. I'm working now on a low-carb diet. I've been doing that for 1.5 years now. My sister's glucose is very low and normal, and she also spikes at 30 minutes after eating. So this person says 1 hour is way too long. Well, I think of all the criticisms I've had, although I haven't had as many lately, maybe I'm doing a better job of explaining it, but one of the big criticisms, especially in my early days, was when I'd tell people to test after about an hour after eating, and they would scream at me, you big dummy, do you not know that the standard for testing after meals, postprandial, and that's a good official long word to use, is 2 hours. 2 hours after eating, that's the only time you should ever test. And if I've said it once, I've said it, well, if not 1,000 times, many times. I'm not interested in any kind of standard. I'm interested in finding out where I peak. If I peak at 2 hours, then that's when I'll test. If I peak at an hour and a half, that's where I'll test. And as I was thinking about this whole idea of peaking, and again, my diet is really a low spike diet. I've been using Mike the Meter for years to see when I spike, how much I spike. and what foods make me spike the most, and those get eliminated, those high-spiking foods. The foods that make me spike very little, those become my go-to meals and foods and snacks. So, here's a couple of thoughts. First of all, the worst diabetics, the ones with the most stubborn insulin resistance, they're going to spike the slowest because it's going to take their insulin-resistant body a long time to catch up with that soaring glucose. So the glucose is going up, and the pancreas is putting out insulin as best as it can, and it's going to take a long time. If your pancreas is still working well and you're not quite so insulin resistant, you will spike sooner rather than later. So for a long time in my earlier years, I would spike at about an hour. Now I spike a little later, but part of that is I'm eating more fat and protein and less carbs than I ever did before. And the older I get, the more protein and fat I eat and the less carbs. So that's going to slow your spike a bit, but your spike is not going to be very high. And that's the thing I'm after, is a low spike after meal, day after day, year after year. That's what I've been after. And that's what I find. When you're eating more fat and protein, it will take a little longer to come down, but it's not going to come up very high. And I'd much rather that than go way up to 200 and then go way plunging down shortly after that, because that is an unhealthy situation. So the worse diabetics, the worse your insulin resistance, the longer you may take. So for you, it may take 2 hours. Or it may take an hour and a half. That's why you need to test. But then the other issue is the foods that you eat are going to make a difference. The worst foods are going to be the ones that will spike the quickest and come down the soonest, usually, if your pancreas has much left in it to be able to fight these high glucose levels. So if I eat a bowl of Trix cereal, it'll spike fast. If I drink a Coca-Cola, it'll spike fast. If I eat a banana, it'll spike fast. But if I eat some pasta, it'll spike slower. If I eat a bowl of beans, it'll take much longer to get to my spike with a bowl of beans than with a bowl of sugar frosted flakes or Cocoa Puffs or Trix or whatever. So a pack of Little Debbie's, it'll spike in a hurry. But the healthier foods, a salad, a bowl of beans, they'll take some time to reach their peak, but the peak won't be as high. And one final thought about this low spike diet. There is something about looking at a glucose meter, and I know I'm not the only one because I've heard too many people say the same thing. There's something about looking at a glucose meter after you've eaten, doing a post-meal test, and seeing a number. You wouldn't think a number would have much power, but there's something about seeing those numbers that just jam-packs motivation inside you. It gives you motivation. When you see a big number, it makes you sick and you want to do better. When you see a lower number and a very gentle rise in glucose, it makes you feel so good and you want to stay with foods like that. And the other thing is when you realize that you can determine how high your blood sugar goes. That was an eye-opener for me. I never thought of it until I started testing my blood sugar with Mike the meter. And I began to realize Dennis Pollock, can determine. A doctor can't determine how high my blood sugar goes. An expert, a professional can't determine. Dennis Pollock, I can determine how high my blood sugar goes by what foods I put into my mouth. If I put a bunch of sugary food, it's going to go high. If I eat a salad, it's going to stay low. If I eat a steak and a low-carb vegetable, it's going to stay low. If I eat a chaffle, it's going to stay low. I can determine that. And it is such a feeling of empowerment to know I can make a difference. There's a lot in this life you cannot make a difference about. There's a lot of things we can't change. And we'd change them if we could, but we cannot. All kinds of things that we cannot change. Some having to do with health, some having to do with your personality, your looks, your intelligence, whether you have a lot of friends or a few friends, whether you've got a wife or you're living alone, or a husband or you're living. There's a lot of things. We do the best we can, but a lot of things we find out I can't change. I know the motivational speakers will tell you, oh, you can be anything you want to be. You can do anything you want to do. That's just foolishness. We can. A positive attitude can help with a lot of things, but there's a lot we can't change. But boy, I can sure change my blood sugar. I can determine. If someone said to me, Dennis, I'm going to give you 4 months and I want you to come to the doctor, and if you can get an A1C somewhere between 6.5 and 7.5, 4 months from now when you go to the doctor, I'll give you $1 million. Folks, I could get there. I could eat just the kind of foods and test myself and get myself on a track to get between 6.5. And the same is, and obviously I wouldn't want to do that, but I'm just saying I could. And the same is true if you're at 7.5 and someone said, Frank or Bob or Susan or whatever your name is, I will give you $10 million if 4 months from now you can have an A1C in the 5s. I'm betting most of you could do that. Most of you could do that. When I say most, it's like probably 80, 90%. So it's empowering to know. It's on me. I can do it. By the grace of God, I can do it. I can eat the right foods. I can do the time-restricted eating. I can stop my snacking, start eating healthier, lower-carb foods. I can make a difference. You can make a difference by the grace of God.